Hi, Alan Millard here. Let's allow men to have an equally valuable existence to women. There are many aspects to consider on this topic, and I want to present another one. It's very interrelated here. Unless we fight men's macho thug disposition and violent identity, the sometimes used to define manhood, there is no way in hell men's intimacy and personal individual existence will be understood, accepted, or even allowed. But continually suppressed, sacrificing an essential quality of life to which men have a right, an equal right, to experience. The two male identities, one in which a male is to take abuse like a man, and the other consisting of the quality of life attributed to a person equal in status to a woman as to not take abuse, cannot coexist. A man-shaming standard will prevail, pitting men against each other. And combined, this equates to a lesser status to women. No man will share anything or compare notes with other men or women, often fearful of being seen as weak, as sissy, or homosexual. Will a man's value as a person reach the same level or status attributed to a woman. He will continue to be conveniently rendered disposable, a mere pawn, masochist, and beast of burden held to coerced expectations to, quote, man up and take it like a man. This is indeed a toxic form of masculinity, opposed to a man being defined in his own right rather than a woman's. Thus, what holds men to this servitude pawn identity to be defined as something outside of themselves? Is it women? If a man defined in his own right is not a woman's idea of a man, she needs to assess her failure to be developed as a complete woman. A man should not, as some sex discriminatory standard per his defined existence, have to compensate for a woman's inadequacies. A man's destiny of self-abuse is predetermined at birth as a boy. As for one's personal existence, sculpted in his own right, only if he is a homosexual is a male given a better option. No heterosexual man can open up and talk about his intimacy or feelings without fear of being deemed weak and vulnerable, embarrassed, and ashamed. Humans must rise above such a primitive level. And this disclosure is necessary for men to have an equal quality of life to women, but only if a proper and safe environment exists. Certainly not a traditional masculine one or a feminist influenced one, predominant in the mental health professions due to their feminist dictated educational backgrounds. If we grant men an equally valuable existence to women, we will find that status opposes conditions existing long before feminism, going back centuries under the practice of chivalry by its Anglo origin. Males have yet to be attributed a standing of worth in their own right to women. Males are groomed from boyhood by their mothers and other men, including their fathers, who have been similarly indoctrinated to serve women. For lack of a better reference, But to make a point at the moment, one could say that three egos exist in males besides the child, the adult, and the parent per psychology's transactional analysis. The self, the masculine self, and their superimposed, male ego self. Who one is as a person comes first, and this needs to be more developed in men, which is quickly combined, merging with the sex identity self, which develops in coordination with the first. Very short-lived, with its lifespan depending on the individual family environment. Some of us may recall, as boys, a discrepancy between how we were treated with less regard than our female siblings, with a stark realization as to our devaluation as human beings when it first occurs. This is when outside influences project themselves upon a boy as to conform to society's and or the traditional family's prescribed male identity. Any self-concept is suppressed within a prescribed maleness, masculine identity, being dictated rather than occurring or developing as a natural process. Note: an existence as to who we are must be re-examined, reaching back to a time in our childhood development when we were kept from completely being our true selves. But the person who we are now may even deny it because we've been altered at that point. That's a part of growing up, is one cliche applying to the effect. But that is a poor excuse and completely discounts a valuable part of ourselves and a very important quality of life to be experienced. This is not to say that males are to play with dolls, but given a choice as to all play toys, with his personal definition not determined so black and white. In an either-or conclusion. Damn kid is either a normal boy or a homosexual, is often expressed in relation to his play activities and what he desires to play with. They don't even have to be play toys. They can be like erector sets and that sort of thing too. But don't limit him. For example, some men are better in the same occupations in which women are employed. Just like teacher, office worker, waitress, waiter, cook, etc. But this doesn't mean they are any less masculine or worthy than other men are. No man-bashing, forced male behavior identity should ever be allowed, a form of bullying due to sex bigotry, just as no type of ownership should ever be allowed applying to any person. People, this includes men, should be free to be who they want to be. Otherwise, they hold no meaning to life other than as slaves and disposable pawns. In conclusion, toxic masculinity is something feminists have referenced or made up, but in their own self-serving ways, their own terms, as to how men treat women, rather than to acknowledge and allow men an identity in their own right. This includes an acceptance of the male's sexuality and other exclusive male characteristics, such as non-threatening male characteristics to either sex, men included. Men need to be considered equal to each other before they can be considered equal to women. But toxic masculinity does exist, often instilled into boys by women, which poisons the pot for other men. What many consider manhood comes at the expense of other men. For example, intimidation and bullying. It's often conveyed that real men resolve their differences by getting violent, often pitted against each other for and by women. But the opposite is true. A lack of intellect and civility does not suffice for manhood. Only a positive male character, rendering good men, rather than idiotic boys. Some boys are better than this, who will never grow up and can resolve their differences without getting violent. As for men fighting for their rights, this same small-minded mentality applies to that too. It's been said real men aren't victims. Well, I don't know what else you'd call them. But so in other words, denial makes a man, a male, a real man. Men are increasingly abused and violated more now than ever before. How does the take it like a man motto or mentality suffice in regard to this? It further enables the injustices to continue and increase towards men. What man in his right mind wants to be a man if it means willingly being abused and experiencing injustice? What kind of a man is this? If a man can't take it as if he should, he's ridiculed as not to be a man, held in the middle between a rock and a hard place. Let's for once consider a man as a real person, equal in status and personal existence to a woman. This will provide us a footing as to real equality between men and women.